Hello, how are you? Nice to have your company here on the Space Nuts podcast, episode 259. My name is Andrew Dunkley, and with me, as usual, is the one and only Fred Watson, astronomer at large.
Ta-da!
Hello, Fred.
Hi, Andrew. How are you doing? Still here, still at large.
Well, actually, rather than a ta-da, I can do this. There you
Very
are.
good.
Welcome,
thank you.
Fred.
It's nice to have a drum roll.
Something different. Now, coming up in this episode, we are going to announce a little bit of good news, something that might have slipped under the radar a bit, but we're going to talk about it. Speaking of not slipping under the radar, unidentified aerial phenomena. The Pentagon's released its report into these incredible sightings that somebody asked us about a few weeks ago, and we gave our personal opinions of them. Well, now there are official opinions of them, so we'll talk about that. It's quite an unusual story, as you'd be aware. But have they got answers? Well, no. We're also going to look at 2,000 stars, all of them individually, one at a time, today. And these are stars where, if there are intelligent beings, they could probably see us. Bye. And we'll answer some questions. Actually, we're going to revisit something we talked about last week. We for the cover of our episode 258 podcast, we put up a photo taken by airline pilot Mark Snelson of Noctilucent Clouds, and I did suggest that in the photos you could see the curvature of the Earth. And Fred, put that one to bed. Well, Mark's actually challenging that, so we're going to revisit it. And we've also got 5,000 questions from Ashley in the United States. It's one massive question broken down into 5 parts. Plus, he's got an idea for something we should put in the Space Nuts shop. So we'll investigate that as well. But first, Fred, I wanted to let you know I'm stuck at home at the moment because Sydney's had a bit of a COVID outbreak and basically has been locked down. So I assume you're stuck at home. I'm stuck at home too, even though I don't live in Sydney, because I was there on the date of the cutoff of the COVID lockdown. So even though I'm now home, I have to lock down as well. So I'm doing my radio show from home. I'm doing the podcast from home. I'm doing my other job from home with the Salvation Army. It's just, like we're back to where we were over a year ago. It just feels so strange.
Let me just put that in context, Andrew, because yesterday I had an email from a friend and colleague, very famous astronomer, Brian Gensler, who's the director of the David Dunlap Institute in Toronto. And he told me that they have just come out of 7 months of lockdown in Toronto. And he was saying he's been working from home since March 2020. He hasn't been into the office at all. So we're doing pretty well. We've got a fortnight of lockdown. I could put up with that.
Yeah, we are. My 2 boys in Sydney, Fred, have been working from home for over a year. They were just starting to go back into the office a couple of days a week, and now back to working from home. It is so fortunate that they've got jobs where they're able to do that, though. So many people have lost their jobs, and it's been very, very hard on some individuals. So certainly not counting our, not dismissing that. It's a pretty serious situation. But we once again ran out of toilet paper. What is it? I don't understand what's going on with that. But anyway, that's the situation. I'll be here till early next week. And then unless things change, I should be able to get back out into some sort of normality. So it's not a massive lockdown, this one, fingers crossed. Just depends on how the numbers go, I suppose, in Sydney in terms of infection rate. But yeah, it just shows you how nasty this Delta variant is. The way it's been described as being able to spread fleetingly, and I think they actually got on film 2 people walking past each other, and one infected the other, and they weren't even within 1.5 meters of each other, which is just extraordinary and terrifying all at the same time. Now, Fred, let's move on. You've got some good news about the square kilometre array.
Indeed, I have. Yes, the couple of days ago, in fact, yesterday actually, 29th of June, 2021, the SKA Observatory announced that it had officially approved the start of telescope construction in Australia and South Africa and outlined its 10-year funding schedule. So remember, the SKA is what will be the world's biggest telescope. The mid-frequency dishes will be in South Africa. The low-frequency antennas, which look like Christmas trees, are in Western Australia. But there are many countries involved. At the moment, there are 7 nations that are the current members of the SKA Observatory. But a further 9 countries are expecting to participate. And on-the-ground construction here in Australia is expected to begin early next year. So it's big news. I'm going to illustrate it as well, Andrew, for anyone who happens to be watching us on YouTube, because I'm holding up a Lego SKA antenna that was given to me by the then director of the project, Brian Boyle, it's probably 10 years ago. Now, the final thing doesn't look anything like this Lego antenna, but it does say on it, I think it says SKA on it somewhere. Indeed, it does, SKA. And that's what it was meant to be. Isn't it, Dinky? A Lego antenna. There you are. Everybody should have one.
It is. Oh, and it moves. But as you say, they've redesigned them. They won't look like that.
Not
now,
even the mid-frequency dishes in South Africa look like that. They are a different design altogether from this, but they are dishes, whereas the ones in Australia are Christmas trees. 131,000 of them.
Antennae. Yeah. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah. Well, that's great news, and it'll be a slow burn in terms of the project being finalised, but it'll be worth it when we are able to solve all the mysteries of the universe in 5 seconds once they switch it on.
Right. That'll be it.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to this other fascinating story, which has received so much traction in the media, and I think it is worth talking about again, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Report from the Pentagon. Now, this is to do with the sighting of 144 aerial vehicles of some kind over a period of years. And these have been spotted by civilian airline pilots and aircraft pilots and passengers and military. And it was so impossible to ignore. The Pentagon has been investigating this, and they've now released a report into it, which I suppose most of the media, and rightly so, have said, well, what are you telling us? Because you haven't actually answered the question as to what these are. But they probably can't. They don't absolutely know, do they?
They don't. There has been some really good commentary on this actually in the media. There's a few websites that have really taken I think a pretty intelligent view of what this is all about and what the US government is trying to do. So just to clarify, those 144 reports are all from US government sources. So a lot of them are military aircraft. In fact, I think a lot of them are actually Navy aircraft. Of those 144, 80 involved observation with multiple sensors. So that's interesting. Most of the reports described unidentified aerial phenomena as objects that interrupted pre-planning training or other military activity. So it's really serious stuff. This is not based on hearsay or anything like that. These are genuine observations. I was really interested to see that the report, which by the way is simply titled Preliminary Assessment Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, it's from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in the USA. The report includes a section describing the difficulties with reporting this sort of thing, because normally, you can imagine a jet fighter pilot coming back saying, "You should see what I saw today." Everybody would just pour scorn on it. And there's one of the sentences I thought was very interesting. Narratives from aviators in the operational community and analysts from the military and intelligence community describe disparagement associated with observing unidentified aerial phenomena, reporting it, or attempting to discuss it with colleagues. And it's a really interesting point that they actually highlight that. Why has the name changed from UFOs to UAP? But that's a good question too, and maybe part of it is to do with what I've just said. As soon as you mention UFOs, people think you've lost your marbles. Whereas, but a more, perhaps a more serious aspect is that some of these things are not necessarily objects. The unidentified flying objects could be other things, and that leads me to the classifications that the report actually goes into. 5 different classes of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, starting with airborne clutter, as they call it. These objects include birds, balloons, recreational unmanned aerial vehicles, or airborne debris, like plastic bags that model a scene and affect an operator's ability to identify true targets, such as enemy aircraft. In fact, they've only highlighted one that has been proved as that sort of airborne clutter, and it was a deflating weather balloon that they mentioned in the report. So that's the first classification. Second is natural atmospheric phenomena. Includes ice crystals, moisture, thermal fluctuations that may register on some infrared and radar systems. Interesting stuff. Then there is US government or industry developmental programs. Some UAP observations could be attributable to developments and classified programs by US entities. We were unable to confirm, however, that these systems accounted for any of the UAP reports we collected. So, they've asked around, are you doing anything top secret? No.
Nothing to see
like
here.
That. And then classification 4 is really interesting. Foreign adversary systems. Some UAP may be technologies deployed by China, Russia, another nation, or a non-governmental entity. However, later in the report, they kind of play that down because and it's certainly true. If there were these things that were capable of Mach 500 acceleration, 500G acceleration, I beg your pardon, and very high speeds, well above the speed of sound. They also there are reports of things that travel faster than the speed of sound without leaving a sonic boom. That sort of technology takes decades to develop, and there is nothing in the intelligence community that suggests that any other nation is doing this. And they also say, and even if they were, why would they, whiz it around military training places, which is where a lot of these things have occurred and been seen? That could just be a coincidence, but it's more likely to be the fact that around military training bases there's lots of air traffic movement, and that gives rise to lots of reports. So yeah, a really interesting idea. And then finally, the final classification is other. Although what they say is, although most of the UAP described in our data set probably remain unidentified due to limited data or challenges to collection, processing, or analysis, we may require additional scientific knowledge to successfully collect on and analyze and characterize some of them. We would group such objects in this category pending scientific advances that allow us to better understand them. The UAPTF, that's the task force, intends to focus additional analysis on the small number of cases where a UAP appeared to display unusual flight characteristics or signature management. I love that, signature management. Disappearing, I guess that means. So yeah, really, a really good attempt to classify all these things, to categorize them, and a worthwhile report, something that's actually worth having a look at. It's very easy to find on the web, the preliminary assessment of UAPs. It is, I should mention as well, basically a redacted version of a much longer report that went to Congress, which was secret. So there is more stuff, but this is the
That'll get the conspiracy theorists going.
But it's probably not that much more. I mean, they've told it like it is in this, and I think it's it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and like you and I discussed before, we both were of the belief, and they have pointed out that it's very, very, very unlikely that we're being visited by aliens. It's more likely to be some human creation, and it could be multiple different, as they've categorized them, could be any combination or a natural phenomenon or phenomena. My belief is that with these extraordinary craft and the maneuvers they've described, it's been made by humans, and perhaps the US military itself has developed some kind of technology that they haven't let out of the bag, not even to their own people yet. I think that's very possible. But and yeah, it could be a foreign entity, which is also somewhat disturbing. But look, we'll have to wait and see. They can't keep it hidden forever, would be my feeling on it. But who knows, really? Who knows?
Yeah, that's right. I think that's right. You're probably right. That's a fairly likely explanation, I think. We will wait and see. I mean, what's encouraging is that this task force is going to keep going with their research, and hopefully they'll find something out.
Yep. Well, fingers crossed. They've got 143 of them they haven't been able to identify. Right. So that in itself is staggering, and that's only in recent years. This isn't we're talking since this has all happened in the 2000s and beyond. So it's not we're not going back to the 50s. We're not going back to Roswell.
No, that's right.
This is all new.
Most, in fact, most of them are recent. So the take-home points are, first of all, unidentified aerial phenomena probably lack a single explanation, which we've gone into. There are 5 categories. Yep. But they also make the point that they threaten flight safety and possibly national security. And, that's a pretty big statement to make with a public document like this. They say explaining UAP will require analytic collection and resource investment, so they want more money. That's fair enough. And that's basically the bottom line. They need to continue the work, and will do.
Yeah. I suppose I'm being a little bit flippant here, but once again, the photographs of these things, even despite the fact that we have such high resolution, high tech cameras these days, are still too fuzzy to identify anything. Yeah. But their speed might have something to do with that.
And, the ones that we've seen, those 4 videos, I think, that were released by the Pentagon of things that can't be explained, they look fuzzy because I think they're infrared images, which often, because you're measuring the heat from an object, often the object itself is heating up the region around it. So they often look fuzzy. But some people have described that as an aura, which is a step too far, because it's just, it's the kind of characteristic thing that you might get with mid-range infrared detection.
All right. We watch and wait with interest and hope that some answers will be forthcoming. You're listening to the Space Nuts podcast with Andrew Dunkley and Fred Watson.
Space Nuts. You've been listening to the Space Nuts podcast. Available at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast player. You can also stream on demand at Bytes.com. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.